Hey everyone, welcome to another Monday night of Insights with Alicia. I'm so thrilled that you are all here. It's been a crazy couple of weeks with the energies, so I didn't do this event the last 2 weeks, so you haven't missed it. It just hasn't been going on. The energy, going on, and I know there's planet things. I have friends who are really good at astrology, and they've been telling me some things, and just myself, what I've been feeling. It's been quite eventful. And so if you have been feeling that way as well, please know that you are not alone in it. But for me, at least, starting to feel like myself again these last few days, which was great because I love doing this event. I love connecting with you all, and I'm so thrilled to be back. So let's see, what are we gonna talk about? All right, so for those of you who are new, I'm Alicia Sweezer, owner of Who Knew Healing. Reason we get together every Monday night is I was led to start sharing some things that I teach my clients, insights I get from myself or the people around me. And I'm an intuitive life coach, animal consultant, psychic medium, intuitive mentor, and my passion is helping people and animals. So thank you so much for joining in. For those of you who are watching on Facebook, I cannot see your comments at this time because I only got one monitor here. So if you do have questions or feedback, that sort of thing, please use the Zoom link and then you'll be in here and I'll be able to see it. So thanks so much for joining. As I said, hopefully you got your favorite drink on Monday night. I got my iced tea as usual. I'm gonna need it tonight because it's a lot of stuff to talk about tonight. I'm super excited. Okay. So two things. One is I finished redesigning, rewriting, recreating my website. Super, super excited about it. It's whoknewhealing.com, right? New with a W. And this has been a project I've been working on for a couple of months, and it's now done. I am so thrilled. And for those of you who think, you can't do something because you don't know how, or you don't know how to do it all, this right here is a perfect example of being able to show you that you can, because I taught myself how to do all of this. So all the graphics, I taught myself, I use Canva, I taught myself how to use it. I do it in there. I wrote the copy, I make the pages. It really, like I said, it's been a couple of months work and I added, I don't know, 6, 7 new pages, which takes time to recreate all of those. And but hopefully any question you could possibly have about Who Knew Healing or myself will be answered on there. So please check it out. And what was the other thing? Oh, one thing, my internet has gone a little wacky this week. So I'm using a hotspot. So just in case it doesn't work like I'm hoping it will, and we get disconnected or it starts to freeze, then I'll just end this and we'll pick it up next week. But just in case that happens, then you all know what is going on. And let's see what else. Okay, so I wanted to tell this other story because it really ties into what we're going to talk about tonight. Is I've had 2 people in the last less than a week say to me something that they noticed about me, and I was like, wow, because it's something I've worked really, really hard on, and we don't always recognize our own progress and that sort of thing. So I wanted to share with you because, like I said, it really ties into one of the things we're going to talk about tonight. So I want you to see that, it's possible, right? This is the outcome. And so one of the things I used to do, right, as a massive people pleaser, that sort of thing, was explain too much, defend, right? You'd give a whole bunch of information where a simple 3-word sentence would work, because we think we have to explain so much. And I've really, really worked on that. You guys know I'm big on conscious communication and that sort of thing. And I had, like I said, 2 different people. I was showing them some texts I was sending. One, I actually was a friend I helped yesterday with a text she was trying to figure out, and I helped her write it. And she was like, oh my gosh, you're so good at just getting straight to the point in a compassionate, very clear, conscious way. And I was like, oh, well, thank you, right? You got to practice receiving the compliment. And the other person basically said the same thing. She's like, oh, I would have written 5 sentences in that text extra. And she goes, and you didn't put that in their own. I was like, no, because it's not pertinent to the information. This person I'm texting doesn't need to know all of the backstory or what all the emotions I went through in writing this text or any of that, right? That's my part. So it really just shows that we can get to a place of where we can communicate really clearly in a really confident way. And it was just so, one, uncomfortable, right? Because like I said, you got to practice receiving, but two, like, oh, wow, that really has shifted for me. Like I work really, really hard at that. And now it's just natural. Now I can help people and like, well, let's tweak this word. Well, you know, that whole sentence isn't even needed to get our point across. So like I said, it ties into what we're going to talk about tonight. So what are we going to talk about tonight? We're going to talk about what I call the entitled why. Da, 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 da. And I might get a little spicy on this one. I'm not going to lie. It's I've had a lot of experience. I see when other people do it to people around me, and it's so prevalent in our society. And the truth is this subject is too long for one evening. So it's going to be two parts. So we're going to talk about the first two steps tonight, and then the rest of it next week. And it's also going to be this week's blog. So for my readers out there, like, right, this is recorded. You'll be able to watch the video on YouTube if you want to watch it again. And if you prefer to read it, it'll be in the blog this week. And it's just, I couldn't believe when I started writing it on Friday. Like I kept writing, and I don't know, I was writing for like 4 or 5 hours. And I was like, this could be a class. Like, so there's going to be a lot of information tonight. I'm thrilled that, you know, recording and I'm going to write it for you guys. But it really could be a class. So like I said, the entitled why. Why is a question in our society. I'm already getting thirsty. So why is a question in our society that can be all encompassing? And as humans, we believe it holds all of the answers for us. And we give this little word so much power. And those of us who have delved into our spirituality know that a lot of the time we don't always get the why. Sometimes things happen, etc., and we don't know why or what they're for. Sometimes it's years later when we get the answer, the why, because our lives aren't linear. Believe me, I wish they were. I'm, you know, my science brain. I really like when things line up, and it's just not how it works. So now for the human in us, we are very, very attached to the why because we use it as a qualifier and a measuring tool in our life, and we don't even know it. How this happens is that we're told to answer every question we get asked. We are told to give a full explanation in our answer. We are told to give every detail possible in our answer. And the truth is that all of this leads to massive people pleasing, unconsciousness, self-judgment, receiving judgment from others, and most of all, living our life by other people's opinions. That is one of the things that I help a lot of my clients with. So the truth is that we're never taught that we don't have to answer a question just because someone asks it. These are all those behaviors, like I said, that I've shifted, and I love that I get to help people with this. All right, let's get into this. What is the entitled why? So have you ever been asked to do something, go to an event, party, etc., and you can't or don't want to go? What does this conversation look like? It's like, thanks for the invite, but I'm not going to be able to make it. Now, the truth is that conversation ends there, right? Like you're like, thank you, appreciate it. You've shown some gratitude and not going to be able to make it. 99% of the time, though, what happens is the entitled why question. People always want to know the why you can't come to their party, because then they can determine if your reason is good enough. We've all had that experience where we say, I can't go, and then they say why. And we say something like, you know, maybe you have to work. And they'll either go, okay, because they, right, someone else out of ourselves has determined that that's a good enough reason. Or instead, some people will even try and get you to take off work, call in sick, all kinds of crazy stuff. And when people are doing this, they're putting their needs above yours. They are putting what they want above you. They are not seeing you as the person who gets to make their own choices, and that your choices have nothing to do with them. They can start projecting all of their own stuff, right? Their insecurities, their beliefs, their judgments onto you. And our part in this is that we care what they think. We're attached to their opinion of us. We are putting someone else's opinion of ourselves above our own. That's the hook that gets us. So they ask, you know, can you come to my party? You're like, thanks, I'm not going to be able to make it. And say you tell them you have other plans, or heaven forbid, you just don't want to go, and they start giving you a hard time. they start telling you it's not a good enough reason. They can then start saying things like, am I not a good enough friend for you to come to my party? They can start bringing up things from the past about when they hung out with you, when they've done things for you. They'll come up with all kinds of things to say to you to try and convince you to come to their party. Because as I said, it's all about them in that moment. It's all about what they want. They don't care what you want or need in that moment. This is a form of clinging and attacking. So how many of us have ever just made up lies to get out of this situation? I know there's times that are popping in your head right now where you're like, oh yeah, I remember. Like it was because it's just, we feel like we're stuck and we're like, I can't find my way out. And so we just say stuff. We just say like, oh, I gotta help my mom or whatever it is, because the reason, what we've told them, the truth, they're not accepting. So we're just throwing stuff out there, see whatever sticks to the wall to get us out of this situation, because we feel blindsided and we feel out of control. So other examples, right, that this can show up is, can you cover my work shift? Why not? Can you babysit? Why not? Can you help me with something? Why not? Can you loan me money? Why not? Can you work for free? Why not, right? It's always the why. So that list is endless. I know that you all have come into contact with many, many of these situations. And as we're going through this tonight, like I said, it's a lot of content and it's in a pretty short period of time. So if you've got questions, something isn't clear, send me an email, send me a message, and I'll address it next week. Or if you've got stories to share about this, if you're like, oh yes, that happens to me all the time, share it, please. I totally would love to hear about it. So when we have, at this point in the conversation where someone asks us something, we say, no, can't make it. At this point is when we get to decide if we're going to let someone else determine our life and our experience in that moment. Are we going to start the dance? Now, the truth is, this kind of conversation can come up in so many situations, right? It can be in all of our relationships, our friends, our work, romantic, family. It's everywhere. So there are multiple steps to shifting this behavior for ourselves. There's 5 steps. We're going to talk about 2 of them tonight. I hope I get through 2 of them. So the first is to recognize the entitled why. Da, 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 da. Second is to know the difference between explaining and defending. It's a big one. Third is to recognize if we're being triggered into our old behaviors of people pleasing, etc., and if we're wanting to explain or defend ourselves. Fourth is to make different choices. And lastly, 5th is to communicate your new choices in an effective and conscious way. So before we get into the steps, I want to give you some more examples of another place the entitled why can show up, which is in questions about ourselves. And I'm not going to lie, these are the ones I get a little spicy about when I'm out and about and group things. And it's where I get to use my tools and, know that everyone is on their path and everyone is doing the best they can. So say you're out for the evening, right? You're out, happy hour, meet up, group event, whatever it is. And you're not drinking for whatever reason. Here's the thing. The reason doesn't matter. You're simply not. And someone asks you, why aren't you drinking? Here's the thing. It's not anybody's business. It really isn't. So, but because we've been conditioned to answer questions, we think we have to answer. And the truth is we don't. We do not. This almost makes me think a little bit about like when I start to teach people, it's kind of the same thing. Like someone will get a text and they always believe they have to answer that text immediately. 1, that they have to answer it at all, and 2, that they have to answer it immediately. It's like, no, you don't. It's no different than if someone calls you, you don't pick up the phone. But we do this thing with texting. We're like, well, they texted me. It's like, yeah, but if you're not in a place to answer it, right? Mentally, physically, emotionally, spiritually, whatever, you don't have to. Wait till you feel better. Wait till you can give an answer that you want to, or, you don't, just because something comes in, we don't have to instantly reply or respond. And, it's that place of the pause. So here's the thing. Someone says, why aren't you drinking? And as I said, it's nobody's business. Whether you're a recovering alcoholic or you just don't feel like drinking that night, Maybe you're on medicine and it doesn't mix with alcohol. No one's business, right? You feel how uncomfortable that is. Like, I know you've had these experiences where someone asks you that, and then you're like, oh, well, do I tell them that I'm an alcoholic, or do I tell them that, or recovering alcoholic, that I'm on medicine, right? It's this uncomfortable place of sharing really personal information with someone that you most likely don't want to, but we haven't been taught that we don't have to. And so it's this feeling inside, and you get to simply say, I'm not drinking. And that's where the entitled why can then show up afterwards, right? So they already have asked you the entitled why of why aren't you, versus just letting you do your thing. But so why aren't you drinking? You don't want to hang out with us. You think you're better than us. Why don't you just have one drink? Why are you acting like this, right? It's all of this kind of projecting their own stuff onto you. People think they have a right to know your personal business, and they don't. And a lot of times, because like I said, this is so rampant in our society, most people don't even realize that they're doing it, and they've had it done to them. So they're just repeating the pattern. And so it just circles and circles and circles. I used to get this a ton about not having kids. Women who are moms were one of the worst for me. It was so hard. Great learning experience, right? And it's brought me to be able to teach people about this, but in the moments it was really, really hard. And it's gone on most of my life. Now, I'm old enough that nobody really questions. They ask if I've already had children, but society has changed a little bit. So it's not as overpowering as it used to be. And as women, we always get asked if we have kids. It's just what people ask. It's fine. And I would say no. And then they would say, why not? And I would say, it just wasn't what I wanted. And then it would start. The why not? Is there something wrong with you? Is your life empty because you don't have kids? Why wouldn't you want a family? Why would you deprive your husband of a child? Assuming, right, that is something I'm doing. And much worse. So this is a place where people start telling you what you should be doing in their opinion, even though you didn't ask. They start judging you and trying to control you because they believe what they know is best. It's just from a place of unconsciousness, projecting. It's a human thing. So here's an example of that, though. It's like, imagine if a woman couldn't biologically have children, right? That's a very painful thing for women. And she gets this barrage of questions and judgments from other women, as if the pain of not being able to conceive isn't enough. Now they have to defend themselves against other moms about why they don't have children, right? Like, you're at a thing, it's like, it's a very personal and painful thing. And then you've got to explain your medical condition or whatever reason it is of why you don't have children, because the fact that you don't, or, you just say, no, I don't, that's enough. That's a complete sentence. So in the past, the only way to get this situation to end, right, is usually giving your personal, sometimes painful information. And these people that do the entitled why, they're not our inner circle friends, right? They are usually outer circle acquaintances, etc., because your inner circle already knows what's going on. Everyone else is just being, nosy and entitled. A family example could look like this. Family's always really triggering for people, right? It's always a good example. Someone asks if your parents are still married or divorced. And for this example, we'll say they're divorced and you don't have a relationship with your dad. The entitled why looks like this. Your parents are divorced, but you don't talk to your dad? And you're like, nope. And they go, why? Whoop, there it is. Now, here's the thing. Most of these examples I'm giving, they usually, not every time, but usually seem to happen in public. It's never just usually one or two people sitting there, right? You're at a thing, or you're at a potluck, or you're at a family get together, right? There's usually someone else around. So there is this public factor that comes into it as well, where you feel a little bit on display. So, you're like, nope, I don't. And so you don't talk to your dad. And so usually we'll just say something generic because we don't want to talk about it at that time, right? It's not the time or place, or maybe with that particular person. So we'll say we're just not a match, or there were some issues. And now here's where more of the entitled why, followed by the projection of the other person's, beliefs and judgments, shows up. Why didn't you make more of an effort? What did you do? Family is everything. Blood's thicker than water. What could have happened that made you not speak to him? Now imagine there's some massive family trauma and you're at a meetup. Like it's just not a comfortable place. Or like I said, you may not even really, like I said, it's not people that we really inner circle know. Why don't you want to talk about it right now? Why didn't you try and help him? And the list goes on and on. So these are just a few examples of where the entitled why shows up, right? It shows up if there's something you've been asked to do, but it also shows up in questions, personal questions about ourselves. And as I said, in my opinion, my humble opinion, it's rampant in our society. Not everything is our business. If you were to see someone with scars or a physical difference, unless they're wanting to share how they got them, it's not any of our business. Is how they have got this physical difference going to, make an impact on how you interact with them or whether or not you become friends with them? I see that a lot. People that have, something that makes them different, and people are like, well, why? Where'd that happen? What did you do? Why don't you want to talk about it? And it's like, not everybody wants to. So for example, imagine something that is very painful for you, something you hold really close. Now imagine being interrogated about it. Imagine someone you've just met or someone you've seen around the group is trying to make you talk about it and you don't want to. Imagine someone bringing attention to it and how you would feel in that moment. I know what that feels like for me. Now think about if and when you've ever done the entitled why. Have you fallen into this, right? People do it. There's no judgment in this. Like I said, I get a little spicy about it just because part of it is the experience I have had. And if I see it if I see it happening to someone else, being an empath, right? I feel all their stuff, and that's my place to use my tools and, be responsible for my happiness. So if you've ever done this is all about awareness. It's not about judgment or beating ourselves up or making ourselves wrong. And now you can understand what that experience is like for the other person and how unpleasant it can be. So this entitled why shows up in many places. And please understand, I am not trying to say, don't try to get to know someone. What I am inviting you to do is try to get to know them from a genuine place of connection, not from the place of entitlement, not from a place of getting. Okay, so now that we know what the entitled why is, let's talk about the next step I mentioned. Oh my goodness, we're going to go over tonight. We're in this. I don't feel like stopping now. Apparently this could be a three episode event. Like I said, it could really be a class. So step 2, the difference between explaining and defending. This one can be challenging to see sometimes. I still fall into this. And if you learn nothing else, this is such an important awareness and tool that will change your life. And there are times when I think I'm having a conversation with someone and I'm telling them about myself, right? I'm explaining and sharing. And then I realize I'm getting drained. The interaction doesn't feel so good. And I want out because I'm feeling attacked and I have slipped into defending myself. It can even be a shift in the energy. It doesn't have to be something they verbally said. And sometimes it can shift, from explaining to defending in the middle of a conversation. It depends on the other person's actions and words. When we're being verbally attacked or someone isn't hearing us, we can start to say all kinds of things because we just are scrambling at that point. That's a place of unconsciousness for ourselves. Like, that's why I love talking about this stuff, because it brings awareness and consciousness, and you go, oh, we may not, from this point on, like, you may still get stuck in the entitled why, right? Like, people asking you might not be able to do all 5 steps to find your way out, but at least you know what it is now. And now you go, oh, wait, this is that feeling. Oh yeah. Okay. That alone changes things. So we'll use the party example, right? They're like, hey, can you come to my party? You're like, no, I'm not going to be able to make it. They don't buy that. They're like, why? Right? The entitled why. And we start to say why we can't come. Like, all kinds of reasons. Because like I said, we've already told the truth. We can't come. Now we start to and it slips into defending, right? So we start to tell them how important they are to us. We tell them all the times we've shown up for them in the past. We argue and defend ourselves against every point they are trying to make to us, because we're trying to like show them all the evidence of where we've been a good friend, where we have done whatever to try and compensate for this one thing that they're having a hard time with. We start to try to make them happy because they've just given us a whole bunch of reasons of how we made them so unhappy, how we did this horrible thing to them by saying no, right? They're playing the victim. When we start this conversation, it ends up in a back and forth duel. And usually the person who didn't want to go to the party ends up giving in and going, even though we don't want to, right? So we slip into our people pleasing, we slip into letting someone else control us. Then we start judging ourselves, we judge them. Nobody's happy at that point. So how do we know the difference between explaining and defending? The main way to tell is how you feel. Now, what does that mean? Right? So explaining, also known as sharing about ourselves, is generative, it's uplifting, it can be fun, it fills us up, we feel the connection with the other people. Explaining has a mutuality to it. Both people are genuinely invested in learning and connecting, right? When you're explaining and sharing about yourself, the other person is leaning in, they're listening to what you're saying. They're accepting and being an allowance of the information you're giving. Defending ourselves can be a little harder to recognize. It can be really sneaky. That's why we pay attention to how we feel. And like I said, sometimes you think you're explaining and connecting, and then you're like, oh, wait a minute. Happens to all of us. Because the truth is we want to talk to people. We want to have that connection, right? We go into it going, yeah, let's learn about each other. But then sometimes that other person isn't in the same place, right? Because there's a vulnerability that comes in learning about someone else. There is an openness that's required, and there's receiving someone listening to you. And not everybody is comfortable with those kind of things. So defending can feel like needing to prove yourself, needing the other person to understand what you are saying. We are attached to them getting it. We feel like a little kid. Our energy gets low and small because we're like, oh, right? And we feel like we're on our back foot. We feel like the ground's unstable. We're just trying to find our way out of this. Our boundary is being pushed. We're not being listened to. And so we keep talking in hopes that they will get it and it will be over. So this right here kind of ties into like what I was saying about my friends that had recognized where, when I'm saying something or whatever, that it's very short and direct and still, caring and compassionate, because I used to be this person. I used to like list all of the reasons of why I couldn't come to something, or, over defend and because I was feeling small. It was how I felt about myself, right? My self-worth was low. So I was like, this is why I can't come. Please still like me. Here's some really, really good reasons. Please still like me. The truth is we get to heal all of that, because none of that, it's important to us and for our healing, but it doesn't get us where we want to go in our connection with other people. And so we get to find our way in the conscious communication of saying just the truth. The authentic truth is enough. Okay. So some actions that can trigger us into defending ourselves, right? Someone asking us questions, but not listening to our answers, right? That's a rough one, because then we slip into this, oh, I must not be saying it right. Let me say it again in a different way. Oh, spent a lot of time in that place. Someone telling us what we're saying is wrong, and by association, right, we're wrong as a person. Someone trying to overpower us with their energy in a conversation. Someone trying to intimidate us. Someone trying to control us. Someone trying to convince us of why we need to come to their party. So all of these can put us into the defending ourselves, on our back foot, right? And many times we don't even know what's happening. And we know that feeling, which is the first step in this awareness, right? Like I said, it comes back to that feeling. I know you guys know what I'm talking about. I know as I'm talking about this tonight, you're feeling that in your body. And now you know what it is. This is the really cool part. So there's so many people I talk to about this, and I explain this difference between explaining and defending, and they're like they just stare at me. They're a little speechless, because I'm like, yeah, I know. So As I said earlier, we are taught to always answer every question and thoroughly explain ourselves, even when we don't want to. Both of these, explaining and defending, always comes back to the feeling. That is what we pay attention to. That is where our awareness is. Now, here's the thing. This is my disclaimer. I'm not talking about the people who don't have any sense of self-awareness and think everyone and everything is attacking them and they must defend themselves. I'm not talking about the perpetual victims here. So know in this that it's not they're and it's just where those people are on their path. But we all know people who are stuck in victimhood and they think they're offended by literally everything that gets said to them. That's not what I'm talking about here. I'm talking about when you're in a conversation with someone and whether or not there's a mutuality of really wanting to share about each other and the other person listening and sharing back, or the place of nope, I'm just not going to drink tonight, or I don't have that in my life, or nope, I can't come to your party. So there's going to be more about that. Like I said, we got steps 3, 4, and 5, right? So it'll all tie in because we're already at time here tonight. And as I was writing this, it made me remember a story years and years ago. Oh my gosh, it's probably like 10 years ago now, that I was literally in the same spot. And this one is the one that really started to shift things for me. Like I remember it is the one that stuck out where I was like, oh, this doesn't feel good, right? It was the moment for me. And it was like I said, a long time ago. And it was a family member that had texted me a question. And it was something about my ex-husband. At the time we were recently divorced. And it wasn't something that I wanted to talk about. It wasn't something that I was in a place to share. It was really personal and private. And but I remember I was outside and I remember sitting going, well, but I have to. Because right, the truth is this person cares about me, right? This, like, she's not being malicious or anything. She really cares. But I didn't want to talk about it. I was still processing it. It was my private experience and my private information. But because of my people pleasing and because of like, oh, well, they're family, and oh, someone asked me a question, so I'm supposed to answer it. And I don't want to make them mad if I don't answer it, right? That was always a big one for me. And I just remember the angst, right? I was already dealing with going through the divorce and then having this part, where I didn't want to talk about something. And I remember that because that moment was life-changing for me, because in this subject that we're talking about tonight, it's that place where I had the feeling, right? I'm telling you, it goes back to the feeling. I had a feeling where I was like, I don't want to do this. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to feel like this anymore. And I was fortunate that I had someone at the time who was, farther down the path than me. And I texted them and I was like, this is what's happening. And she was so wise. And she was like, you don't have to. She was like, you don't have to share. And I was like, what? Exactly what I'm telling you guys here tonight. And I was like, you're right. I don't. Right. And I get that that's like, it seems so simple, but for those of us that have been codependent, those of us who've been people pleasing, those of us who've had trauma in our past, like this place where it becomes a self-empowerment, right? This place where we sort of get more in integrity with ourselves, where we own our own energy. It's very foreign to us in the beginning. Like this was part of, my growth and healing and awakening and all of that. And it's uncomfortable and we just don't know. And so, partly that's why I love what I get to do, because I remember these things. And, sometimes the habit still slips in and I get to help other people with it now because I remember how it felt. And if we can shift that for one person, then my job here is done. So, like I said, tonight we talked about the entitled why, the 5 steps. I'm going to just say them again. We got through 2 of them tonight. I'm going to go back and find them in my notes here. Oh, look, I'm too far down. Where'd they go? So the first one, right, is the knowing what the entitled why is. The second step is knowing the difference between explaining and defending. The third is to recognize, which we'll start with next week. The third is to recognize if we're being triggered into old behaviors, people pleasing, that sort of thing, and wanting to explain or defend. Fourth is to make different choices. And fifth is to communicate our new choices in an effective and conscious way. Because sometimes, we get our new words and then we're like, oh, but I don't know how to say it. And, oh, then all the feelings come up and all this kind of stuff. So it's a multi-stepped process. And we will, like I said, we'll start with step 3 next week. So thank you all so much for joining in for this Monday. I'm thrilled to be back. Like I said, I missed the last couple of weeks and I missed you guys. I hope you had a great time and enjoyed yourself. I hope you learned a ton. Like I said, if you have any questions about this, I get you might have some because we stopped in the middle, but shoot me an email, send me a Facebook message, whatever. And if you got any questions, then we'll address them next week. I know it was a lot of content tonight, and hopefully, like I said, the recording will be loaded tonight and the blog will come out on Wednesday. And so, like I said, for my readers out there, and as always, if you know someone that this could resonate with, please share the video. It's on YouTube under Alicia Sweezer. All of these links that I'm going to talk about right there in the event listing. If you don't want to miss any of this kind of great stuff, sign up for my blog, join my meetup. Massive, massive thank you to all of the people who have donated to my Cosmic Tip Jar. It allows me to create more free things like this that I get to give to people. Links are in the event. And as always, if anything that I talked about tonight makes you want to learn more, please reach out, book a session, schedule your free discovery call for the, my amazing coaching program that I absolutely love. Let's see what we can create together. I hope you all have an amazing week, and I will see you next Monday. All right. Bye, everyone.